お前歩いた。俺が見させてもらったんや。まあ、大人だったらもう連休明けかにあと四国行くわ。どうなってるの？このジム信頼でいいわ。いや、本当にこの前と。いや、あのカメラどうするんですか？つけよ、お前ら、本当に。いいか。
Because diplomacy, like defense, has to do with protecting the identity of a political unit.
もう遅いね、本当に。間に合わなかったんだよね。本当にまさか旧三局局インターナショナルあれの YouTube 見てびっくりや。何で田舎を信じてなんか長いことさせ禁止だけど旧三局渋沢の国やったそうだ宮津やった藤井もやった大将の吉田もな吉田俊介の来るやんこいつやけどダメっつってたよ目覚め3月にねヘリで来たそうや日本政府の長でもうここ工事中やったら入れんかってもう知ってるから現場見させてもらったら、まあそこやろ、もう知ってるわ、もう見た。めっちゃ英語化したとか。めちゃくちゃ。
Than China's rise to the current international order. Because China's policy tries to maintain the order, the reason is a very obvious. China present order, and and China benefited more from the current order than the United States. That's why they want to change the order, and based on the ideology of anti-establishment. So from my understanding, if we talk about the ideology and the liberalist order, it's anti-establishment.
もう死が戦場にあるわ俺の件で戦場にあるわここ栃木と埼玉のことや演奏させる取っといてよかったこれやってるんだよなこんなもんやあっちやこれよ
I think most people would agree, probably even Beijing, that America remains the world's dominant political power. And the question is, will that economic mismatch between economic power and strategic power change? China will become the dominant power, not just economically, but politically. It's too soon to tell that, however, on that. There are a lot of different variables. Will there be a direct conflict between China and the US, for example, over dominance of the Pacific? Will China have to be constrained by other things? Maybe there'll be internal disruption to China's politics if it cannot manage to, for example, maintain the current political stability. That could disrupt China's political rise. And finally, there's the question of the rest of the world, because between them, China and the US are not the whole of the world economy. Other major powers will have a say in this. And at the moment, it looks like most of the other major powers of the world, Japan, the European Union, are closer to the United States than to China. So there's a question whether China, even as the world's largest economy, can become the dominant political power without allies.
探してくれてるめっちゃものすごいそうしてる絶対知ってるよ SN 事件あったよマーケットグリーンマーケットグリーンあったよあったんや俺を報道してたよ
I think economic growth, success or failure of it will be determined by the degree to which individual countries and regions can supply jobs for the great emerging middle classes in these countries formerly poor. I think what we're likely to see in the 21st century is many people who are either liberated from hard labor or for whom there is too little hard labor to provide jobs. And what will these people do? How will they be employed? And I think that will be a major factor contributing forward. Also, even though world population is declining, we're still in an era of massive male in about 20 or 30 countries, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to provide jobs for people, whether it's in China, in Yemen, in Ethiopia, or wherever.
Of my talk is if robotics and artificial intelligence and the upcoming industrial revolution are a threat or an opportunity for the world and for manufacturing countries and also for developing countries. And the answer is still unknown, but what is sure now is that we have to invest in the main assets that are characterizing the industrial revolution, the digital transformation, competences, infrastructures, data centers, and all the tools that are fundamental and are considered enabling technology
ほら、こんなよくやったって言ったんや。
digital transformation.
ほら、こいつはやってるんや。おい、昨日の手出しを言うぞみんな。
Europe and China, how they are integrating artificial intelligence into different knowledge and competences and scientific results. For example, in the US, they are investing very much in developing artificial intelligence for humanities, while in China, they are investing in developing artificial intelligence for agricultural application, for producing food. So globalization has results in terms of being socially connected, but in terms of
てるんやよ。これ見たけど、本当に。去年見つけたの。びっくりした。花粉症がいい。やっぱ俺で漏れたか。親子テロリスト会議。漏らしたか。Because robotics was developed for manufacturing countries for industrial production and are in manufacturing plants. But in recent years, what we have seen is the development of service robotics, which is intended to provide services and they offer services in terms of medical robotics, social robotics, educational robotics. And now, what is happening is that robotics is coming our houses by producing consumer products and also producing changes in the society with some of supporting
autonomous drive or different products that are revolutionizing business and revolutionizing our lives.
おい、花見系埼玉にいるぞ。ここら辺で3回するぞ。手元ショートの長めその向こうへ。敬語かな。用心棒でいてるぞ。サイバーやってるぞ。警察の車両で。
The global agenda talks about eradicating poverty, eradicating hunger, having every child in primary and secondary education. We're on track to achieve these things. And that means not just a few people left behind. It means
ライブローション爆破していいぞ。
missing out. Take education. More than a quarter of a million children. And
ざっとはいお前らが拉致の加害者。
how can those
おい、ささえ、レベル知ってときゃお前ら。テロリストのかばいやって。
deny the most basic access to education?
あれやったのに、構えてんのよってことだ。いや、主人のどうです。帰国中は放棄していいよ。足りない結果、大抵は100名単位でいるが、11機で警察は襲うからなって言ったら、襲う黙らしに行くわ。黙れこれ。出てけこれ。おい、66の女ついて撤去するよ。邪魔やあいつ。
There are more than 70 million people in the world that are forcibly displaced from their homes, either as refugees crossing borders or displaced in their own country because of war, violence, discrimination, persecution, bad governance.
人間仕様なもんよ。お前ら預貯金口座凍結されてる。来るっていうの。
A difficult place where to make peace have become
追加制裁して発表してる。
to Middle East. So that's the first thing that we need to look at if we want to reduce
まあ、
refugee crisis.
GI 制裁関係。
What's very important to remember is that 85% of those
朝日も残念な埼玉新都市
are
の
not
勤務中
in
だ
the
し。
rich world.
知ってるから。
They are in poor countries or middle income countries. So the effort, the new effort, not just humanitarian, but medium, long-term effort, founded on sound development, both for refugees and for host communities, has to focus on those countries. We have now a global compact on refugees. We will have the first ever global refugee forum in December this year.
前らのせいで俺40、50年間人生破産してないんだよ。冷凍保存されてる。でもテロ行為やったな、パスポートマークしやって。まさか琵琶湖で不法投棄して、俺の職員が発見したが。おい、三日月、お前、この前行くと爆破するぞ。応援部隊襲撃するぞ。さすがにこっちのね、広島経由で。さすがにおミシガンの完成教軍が襲ってきたら、よーし。大体こっちは主力部隊が危ないね。まあ、こっちは20名ほど配置して、10歳持てばぶっ飛ばせるから。あいつも。車でしか来られんから。どの道にね、制裁食らったらさ、原発まるでるわ。ガソリンスタンド止まるで。スタンド全部止まるで。石油ステーション止まるで。止まるで。兄貴新聞さん無理やろお前ら。連合総領軍隊結成が軍隊の自分。浅さんは今こっちへ。宇都宮攻略したんでな、埼玉に。
address
遠く方面に信号
members of the trilaterals and their guests.
回せんね、工
I
藤
think
会
my focus will
あっ
be
ちほっとけ、
on
ヒゲの古い
one is
抑えた
multilateralism has been
全然ダメだ荒波消えたら水は今ここの農場所長場所に警察の護送車両でサイバーテロをやってるで
rejuvenated, adapted, and make sure that it continues to help government, particularly economies.
こういう機材を乗せてさサイバーテロやって移動し
My
た
second message was to do with the much longer-term consequences of short-term policies and mechanisms, and that is really the consequences of climate change. I believe that many of the issues that we're debating
もうすぐ退散したけどねただでねカナダ空港に去ったけど
20 years' time, if we have not acted now, the climate remains something that is hospitable for our children and
あっさりねソロ持っていいやん非公開のさ
any of those
栃木のあたり
friends
空火
will have to do with inequality, and in particular the inequality that women have to suffer and have had to suffer for a long time.
どうなんだよ
As such is
宇都
making
宮におかしいやろ
addressing women's
筆も
women's
ない
situation and the inequality that they face will help quite a way.
京都でさ京都の舞鶴ってなんで井上の車からだ歌川だろお前のせいで抗議してわざとやったんか
We're living through an era of rapid and disruptive change. And that's across the board, economy, society. And what we're seeing is that nowhere is that disruption more
持ち逃げしたやろもう遅いて
climate change. We're all familiar
もうその占領させてやろ民主派の会で
with the inexorable change that we're seeing in planet's ecology as a result of climate change. But a major part of that discussion is how does energy transition, decarbonization of our
死には抜け穴になったら
for about 2/3 of
完成曲襲ってくるんかな
impact climate change and can be
昔国
transition era rapid
遅いんじゃないか島根の
that will take us to a state.
どういった北四国の西部遅いんじゃないか
It's cost competitive on the grid. In a few years, renewable energy has
襲っ
reached
てくる
33% of capacity of global power generation. It's the fastest growing segment, and costs are increasing rapidly. So what we're going to see is a rapid movement towards
いろんな準備完了したから
also
ね
going to be disruptive for the business models of today. It's going to imply new geostrategic connections as countries move away
おーさすがに
resource is going to become
多いよ
going to decide the winners and losers in this race.
何のコソコソしやがって
IEA, International Energy Agency, assessed the current effort was not enough. New technology or carbon-related
車にないで絶対来ない
difficult sector in the
無駄な北陸自動車を利用したのもう石油のストックないやろないやろ
or triple our efforts to make it happen. One of the areas which IEA focused on is hydrogen. Hydrogen can be used to store the electricity generated by wind or solar, which is very volatile, and storage is the key element. So battery may not necessarily be enough, so hydrogen can be used. And also hydrogen can be used for steel, cement, some of the industries where the decarbonization is very
知らん場所やったら
That's another area. The third one
もうちょっと整備せえよ。
new transformation for
もうちょっと整備したれよ。
for gas producing countries.
建設といい
If
ね
they can
もう
remove
ちょっと
carbon dioxide from oil or gas or coal,
もうちょっときれいに整備
these
せえよ。
hydrocarbon change into the very
放置しせえや、暴言しやな。
climate friendly resources.
てめえ、邪魔しちゃうよ、これ。後ろに伸びてるよ。お前、集めて。知っててくれ、ラチ。
Stranded asset. So maybe the hydrogen is one of the key area. We need lots of infrastructure building technologies are necessary, but hydrogen may give us a good chance to achieve the sustainable future.
関連業機関に製品はショーパンも持ってるわさ、こういうのが
The challenge of dealing with disinformation narrative is that it's not enough just to check the facts, because by definition, any disinformation narrative doesn't have the facts. They make their facts up. They're actually lying. This is why it's disinformation. So the challenge with disinformation narrative
ワグナーとか。
they tell a story.
仮名で。
A lot of the time they will
高いから。あとはもう。
hatred, and they will try and stop people thinking. They'll try and get people so enraged.
トランジ無法状態になるんや。
That means that for those
それ、
who
まあ、
are trying to challenge
あれ
these
や。
narratives on a daily
いや、
basis,
あ
it's a much more complex challenge
自由を持ってさ、
than just presenting the facts.
こうあんた見合ってるから
You have
ね
to。have the ability to tell the story, and you have to find an emotion to appeal to, which will actually get people to think. Now,
無
fortunately,
理や
there
った
is
ら
a
向こう
model
の
of
西日
story.
本なんで。
Think of the detective story. That's a story where you're putting together evidence and you're telling people this is what happened, this is why it happened, and it appeals to a different sort of emotion. It appeals to curiosity. It appeals to
離
problem
れんだろ、さすがに。
And so a lot of the challenge of dealing with disinformation is presenting the
あ
story
の、
of
住
how
人の大
disinformation was created.
面白いぐらい、
How was
当
the
社
trick
で。
done? And you can lead people to the
面
story.
白いぐらい、不良だから。
This person is telling you that
絶対みたい
here
な。
is
や
a
りかね
video
んわ
of somebody attacking
面白せてるよ、もう。
a polling station yesterday. But actually, look,
面白い
this video showed up on
いい
CNN
ね。
4
ナ
years
ン
ago
バ
in a different context.
ー。福井ナンバー
Share
で
that
会話が
voyage of discovery.
手続きしてるんじゃないか
And then they will realize how the trick was
な。
done.
払ってて。
But it will also sensitize them that the next time around, they'll be looking for that same trick. If you teach people very simple skills like searching
攻
for
撃
photos
や。
online
こ
or
れ
searching
イラク
for
とそっ
video
くりやろ。
online, you can actually make them proof against that kind of reused content, repackaged content. Not just today, but every time this kind of thing comes up. And so really dealing with this information, you
ま
have to
さ
have
か、
facts, but you have to
この宇都宮、栃木、埼玉って、
the ability to solve
新潟って、もしかして、
appealing to their curiosity,
飾る
you'll
って
be
いう
appealing
こ
to their
と
problem solving senses, and you'll be appealing to their sense of pride in
な
actually
ぜか
exposing the story in the first place. And those are the kind of emotions which will then counter the anger and the
エネルギーが今こっちの埼玉の新都市に合同庁舎にいるらしいな。埼玉スーパーアリーナの近く偶然じゃなかった。お前ら知ってたで、赤ペンキ事件。ダメージスーパーアリーナ戦場になるやん。15連戦の時の
Cities are one of the greatest innovations of all times, and what's interesting right now is that urbanization is, alongside with digitalization,
こんなところにいいんやん
very,
と。
very strong economic
し
force
かもホ
for
テル
innovation.
どうせいい
As
ね
more and more
あ、安いんじゃないとかやん。
move into cities and
こんなライブ行く
areas,
必要ねえよ。もうやめとけ。面会も無理
urban
なや
areas
つ
were important during the industrial era, but they are increasingly important in a knowledge-based economy. And what's interesting,
なんか無視した
especially for a person like me who comes from a small city like Stockholm, is that there seem to be room for cities outside inside the megacities as well, there
分
are
裂
some unique
分裂したからやっぱ分裂したから
drivers of innovation that are smaller or mid-sized cities, amongst which Stockholm is actually one, but there are a number of examples. And what is important if a city wants to become a outlier or a hub for innovation is collaboration. If you look at urban innovation especially, you need to have a strong public-private partnership. The mayor needs to gather people from private sector, from academia and other stakeholders around the table and work together to solve
交通の便悪すぎやな
and I think we see that to a quite large extent right now, and I hope we'll see more of it going forward.
あれ聞けばはあこんなところでやってるからカラーリングムービーどうぞ撮影俺言うわどうぞ人気感が振っとけ
I have to say a meeting, a global meeting.
弱えよ言ってるぞ今頃呼び出せよちょっと悪すぎるぞおめえ
Very, very multidimensional, if I may. Multidimensional in the great tradition of the Trilateral
ホットカンパニー悪質やったらあんまり変わるし公開じゃない
experiences of the members, by the sensitivities of the members, by the fact that it was, of course, non-partisan.
あれここは絶対
Meeting also because
関西局でもこっそりここらに集結してるんじゃないか
in all respects
国方面攻めるために
issues that were
こっそり石油
geostrategic nature,
整備蓄してん成蓄財してんだ
found the economic nature, issues related to environmental
絶対そうや
difficulties and challenges, and we addressed also
四国方面戦力回す
challenges for our societies that populism, so-called populism represent, which is also a large multi-dimensional issue. So
俺らゴミ水色喧嘩しまったからね喧嘩したからね詐欺ありやって汚れるんやいざ施設しか本当に知ってたよなゴミ富士おめえ三日月知ってたのゴミ三日月田中駅業と笹井健一報告してたよ俺の件俺奴隷生活観念報告してたやろこれ
and also Asians, and of course the whole of Asia at a global level is more and more important. As regards new dimension for the Trilateral Commission, not only we confirm our own values, democratic values, rule of law,
消えてもたやあいつらに
rights, and all the laws with a democratic society, but we also reinforce
さあ本当に
our values as regards multilateralism,
その
in the best sense of the term.
優遇されてるどうなってるんやシューナがアウトやん本当に
With the new initiatives that we took, in particular, the idea of having
騙されたんや
display of
あの反対を無視した
some of the issues that we
ド
will
ナル
address,
高槻破産しろと
also with the idea of making known at the level of the Trilateral Commission all publications, articles, interventions, books
ユニクロもうすぐ急なのを撤退するやった
by the members of the Trilateral Commission. All this, of course, as part of transparency and also as part of
派遣なんねん
being
あれ別にいいんですよ
if it is possible.
ゴミ急なが出身なんや
Given a mandate to the chair to see
車で来てるのそれでしょ
more proactive in terms
新
of
幹線から
display of our ideas through various forms. So this is something which should be considered well important.
そうなの
Is
か
one of the major conclusions of the
なぜかって言
Commission
ってないし
in Paris.
何言って最悪
I am the new chair of the North America group of the Trilateral Commission. I wanted to take this opportunity to say a few words about the Commission and about our future. As you may know, the Trilateral Commission is a storied institution, an organization with 46 years of history of having an impact on big ideas, on bringing people together across different sectors and across 3 different geographies, that of North America, Europe, and Asia. But we are on the cusp of a new chapter, one that builds on that history, but really reorients ourselves and puts us in a position to make an impact in very, very different worlds. And the reason why I have such confidence that the Commission can remake itself is because there is a need, and the Commission is well suited to meet that need. And that need is quite simply that in this day and age, in these political landscapes, the need is simply for more organizations, more individuals, more entities to take up the mantle of defending a rules-based order, an order that values and is committed to democratic principles, ideas like free trade and human rights. And we also have a need for more ideas to help us tackle new challenges, or certainly challenges that are new to this generation. And there are many reasons why I think the Trilateral Organization is so well poised to meet this need. First and foremost, we are an organization that at its heart is a community of countries that share a common set of values, that share these commitments to these ideas about democracy, about free markets, about the rule of law. And secondly, we have a membership that spans policy, business, and academia and media. And that allows us to bring minds together and experience to bear on problems that are no longer just the purview of one of those sectors. The things that need to be thought about today and where we need new solutions and prescriptions are ones that are at the intersection of business and policy, whether it is the contributions that private sector organizations can make to combating climate change, whether it is figuring out the ideas that will drive the reform of capitalism, or whether it is understanding the impact of technology on our systems. All of these things need business, government, and others at the table to help with. Now, of course, to realize this potential for the Trilateral Organization to meet this need, we are going to have to do some things differently than we have in the past. First and foremost, we are going to have to recognize, as a group primarily of democracies, we need to spend some time looking at ourselves, looking internally, saying what's happening with our own institutions, what is the health of our own institutions, and how is that situation affecting our ability to cooperate across national lines and deliver global problems, pressing global solutions. So we're spending more time talking about things like populism and the impact of technology on our own society. Secondly, we've got to think about impact differently. Traditionally, we're an organization that has had impact based on the very nature of our relationships. We're an organization of people who have close ties to national governments, and often the ideas that we debate in private inform our own perspectives and inform our discussions and deliberations and conversations with people in positions of power. That will still be true, but today we need to think about having an impact on the broader debate. We no longer live in a world where governments are the only ones that can the future. In fact, increasingly, we have to think about other entities as being the real engines of change, and be that corporations or universities or even individuals. We need to think about how to shape the conversation, how to bring those groups in, to have investment in and commitment to solutions, and to move ahead whether or not we're able to get our governments to agree with our prescriptions and recommendations. So in short, it's a really exciting time to be part of the Trilateral Commission. I'm deeply honored to be the new chair of the North American group, and I look forward to working with all our members and my colleagues from other regions to realize this vision. Thank you.
ダイヤの6いるとはな、びっくりした。デイビッドさんの
So I'm Jane Harmon, and the question is, what is the future of political parties. I can speak to the U.S. more than anywhere else. I was a member of our Congress for 9 terms and left because it became so partisan and dysfunctional. At the Wilson Center, we study this, and there are some remedies to the problems, but bottom line, in the U.S., our tradition is 2 parties only. In Europe, there are multi-party systems in most countries, and we're seeing the rise of populist parties. In the U.S., we have no populist party. We have a Republican Party that is now dominated by our president. We have a Democratic Party where most of the noise is coming from the far left. Don't have anything to represent the center. That is the challenge for the U.S. going forward. That is something I work on, and that is something that the Wilson Center is hoping to improve, because if we are to convey at least a majority view in the United States, essential to making our foreign policy and domestic policy effective, we need to reach for the center so that we have both parties participating. And hopefully we'll advance that goal here at the Trilateral Commission.
それで田中真由美さんがなぜね、うちの刑事が大量にやりや、もう俺に来ると。
So I'm Jane Harmon, and the question is, what is the future of political parties? I can speak to the U.S. more than anywhere else. I was a member of our Congress for 9 terms and left because it became so partisan and dysfunctional. At the Wilson Center, we study this, and there are some remedies to the problems. But bottom line, in the U.S., our tradition is 2 parties only. In Europe, there are multi-party systems in most countries, and we're seeing the rise of populist parties. In the U.S., we have no populist party. We have a Republican Party that is now dominated by our president, and we have a Democratic Party where most of the noise is coming from the far left. What we don't have is anything to represent the center. And that is the challenge for the U.S. going forward. That is something I work on, and that is something that the Wilson Center is hoping to improve, because if we are to convey at least a majority view in the United States, essential to making our foreign policy and domestic policy effective, we need to reach for the center so that we have both parties participating. And hopefully we'll advance that goal here at the Trilateral Commission. So I'm Jane Harmon, and the question is, what is the future of political parties? I can speak to the U.S. more than anywhere else. I was a member of our Congress for 9 terms and left because it became so partisan and dysfunctional. At the Wilson Center, we study this, and there are some remedies to the problems. But bottom line, in the U.S., our tradition is 2 parties only. In Europe, there are multi-party systems in most countries, and we're seeing the rise of populist parties. In the U.S., we have no populist party. We have a Republican Party that is now dominated by our president, and we have a Democratic Party where most of the noise is coming from the far left. What we don't have is anything to represent the center, and that is the challenge for the U.S. going forward. That is something I work on, and that is something that the Wilson Center is hoping to improve, because if we are to convey at least a majority view in the United States, essential to making our foreign policy and domestic policy effective, we need to reach for the center so that we have both parties. Hopefully, we'll advance that goal here at the Trilateral Commission.
なろうね、ちょっとごめん。わざとして。さてや、刺激。石川のところ、襲撃していいぞ、みんな。周りのところ、襲撃していいぞ、トライブ。戦争で銃撃戦になるで。 時間空間
unable to perform well. So I believe that the real problem is not political parties,
まったく
lack of ability of governments to deliver in poor conditions. The governments have been unable to deliver for very long
意味付け借りるんやねん本当に
difficult to govern in the era
タッカー
of information.
中戻しやがったよ本当に
Control of the sources of information because they compete for
い
information.
ますよ本当に
So the real problem is not political parties. The real problem is that societies in the world are lacking legitimacy. It's interesting to watch that there are a few governments in the world that know how to govern and have succeeded in maintaining the legitimacy.
ただつれか
And in those
この自軍
parties are not losing. So the real issue
はあ
is to create conditions for the people to have access to
オッケーしか
without compromising
なんで
society.
なんでないん
It's not
だ
something easy to accomplish.
なんでこの絵
Dramatic
なんでここにないんだ
politicians
このままいけば
an enormous effort of society
経営で個人やれねえぞ
create forms of participation.
新幹線も作るのかよ考えろ本当にもう
The political parties, however,
いやいやいやよきわかるが
responding to the
距離ね
reality
距離やから
of societies. And they are not likely to be the ones to lead this process. One ought to look only at the
あそこにあ
election
ったでしょさあったよ
まあ何も距
to
離やか
realize that this is likely what is likely to
ら
happen.
距離やから
There is the Brexit party, which is not looking for power, it's just looking for an
対
issue.
日参戦の準備
Was
し
the
て
one
や
to
っぱり
succeed.
な
So the citizens around the world
Mm,
are
good,
going to
good.
have to be much more responsible in creating conditions
も
for
う映像出たん
accessing
だ
power
やっぱア
and
メリ
for
カと
making
か
it
占
possible
領
for
者の
stability and legitimacy to be accomplished.
占領者がどうせ俺いいか四国設定した四国正解やねやばいオーストリアハンガリーで BS、PS やっぱりな軍にお前戦争者がやっぱりな見つけた俺そう検索して一発
The
で
best way for companies to surf the digital revolution is to build trust with their customers and to build trust with their employees. One of the ways in which companies can do that is to have frank conversations with the workforce, to sit down with workers and their unions and to say, look, here's the challenges that we're facing, but importantly to ask them, how can we best get there? Because all too often, a lot of those solutions that a company can put in place that will make a real difference, the employees know the answer to that.
自衛隊を駐留してた来てるよ
何
ソビエト軍占領者ってショーバン
The best way for companies to surf the digital revolution is to build trust with their customers and to build trust with their employees. One of the ways in which companies can do that is to have frank conversations with the workforce, to sit down with workers and their unions and to say, look, here's the challenges that we're facing, but importantly to ask them, how can we best get there? Because all too often, a lot of those solutions that a company can put in place that will make a real difference, the employees know the answer to that.
多分あんまりわからんと思う
NHR がもうあんなもっと詳細載せと
これの交差点見てくれたらわかるよシーザーアプリケーションも
ねさせるじゃん
Not only the best,
潰れてる
in
か
many cases the
そ
only
うや
way
大切
in which you can deal
潰れてたんか
with issues. Because we're dealing with global challenges,
来年分か
therefore
っ
you
た
need global solutions, you need multilateral
ね
solutions.
ライスマシン
They take a little longer, yes, of course, but once you get it, then they will stick around for longer,
東海道新幹線
and
占領事件
you will get greater ownership, and therefore you will tend to have more effective solutions.
やっぱりな
The other way is that, of course, unilateralism is always about who is stronger in a bilateral relationship. And therefore, by going multilateral, what you do is you balance, and all the opinions count. Of course, you always have the bigger countries speak louder, but the differences are less, and also the needs of the smaller countries, the needs of the developing countries, the needs of the groups in a society that are left behind, then they are much better addressed by a multilateral approach. So yes, today we need multilateral more than ever before.
これなんかどうでもいいやしょ、また高木で海にごてだったんじゃないのな。しょいいいから。
The Swedish chapter, and we appreciated enormously their organization. All the panelists were very, very stimulating, interesting. Many provisional conclusions coming from this meeting, including the fact that the inventors want to be more assertive perhaps than they were before in many domains, including the digitalization, the platform at the global level, including industry and research and services at a global level. This idea that Europe as a whole should be again more present in global conversation came very much out of this meeting, which was again very comprehensive and stimulating. But you will see that in the various people perhaps that you would like to see. Now I have to give you we have rendezvous in Washington because it would be the trilateral and the three pillars of the trilateral, the entire world, if I may. And this is a Washington meeting which will take place in March 13 to 15. And so we are with a big rendezvous which will be important and where we will discuss the global issues in the tradition of the trilateral with the vision of an open world, free world, a world which is taking stock of science, technology, and the new wave of innovation, and also respect our fellow citizens, is attached to democracy, is attached to equality produced by the working of a market economy, a living market economy. So, à bientôt.
We have just concluded the meeting here in Stockholm of the European section of the Trilateral Commission. I think it's been a great meeting. I think we've been able to have a dialogue on a lot of the issues that are of concern to all of us. Where are we going on the climate issues? How is the digital transformation going? What is the security really going to look like in the digital world? Where is Russia heading? What are the Americans up to? What will be the consequences of Brexit? So virtually all of the issues that are topic of concern to us Europeans at the moment have been on the agenda during these particular 2 days in Stockholm. And then I think we have also been enjoying the company of this very diverse and very interesting and increasingly young group that is the Trilateral Commission Europe.
I suppose the question we're all asking is, will the Brexit saga ever end? After 3 years after the referendum, the British still haven't decided what they want to do, and they're now in an election. I suppose that the answer to the question depends on who wins the election. In order to try and answer that question, you have David Lidington, who was Mrs May's number 2 in the last government,
ないんか。
I suppose the question we're all asking is, will the Brexit saga ever end? After the referendum, the British still haven't decided what they want to do, and they're now in an election. I suppose the answer to the question depends on who wins the election. In order to try and answer that question, you have David Lidington, who was Mrs May's number 2 in the last government, and who chose not to serve under Mr Johnson, the current Prime Minister, and he's going to tell us who's going to win the election and whether that's going to bring things to an end. And I'm going to disagree with whatever he says.
まあ、もう遅いね。遅いね。
I think that the relations between Russia and the European Union are in the stalemate
Yeah.
right now. There has been no major movement in either direction since the European Union accepted the so-called 5 federal democratic principles almost 4 years ago. Both sides apparently believe that time is playing on their side. They can sit on their hands waiting for something to change. However, I think that on both sides we see more and more fatigue and more and more tension to
やっぱ俺の覇気のけ。
this relationship. I do hope
最低やん、本当に。
the summit
おい、やめや。
turns out
やめないぞ、藤井。藤井。お前らよ。
opens
テロ行為、撲殺したんか、これ。 いい加減にせんと本当に。
stumbling block on the way to
遅いぞ、シガ全部。
process. If we're able to
一撃ついてや。
some positive dynamics there, it would be easy to proceed on other issues where Russia and the European Union have common interests.
おかしすぎやな。
4 years ago, both sides apparently believe that time is playing on their side and they can sit on their hands waiting for something to change. However, I think that on both sides we see more and more fatigue and more tension to start gradually rebuilding this relationship. I do hope that the
今度はさすがに
France
ドン
turns
ジャッ
out
プ
to be moderately successful, we might see
よ
new
みたいな。
openings
四
because
国方面
of
防
course
衛
Ukraine
をさ
remains the major
この連中に襲ってくるんじゃないか。
process. If we're
それ備蓄してんやろ。
at least some positive
茨城の
dynamics
沿岸地
there, it would be easy to proceed on other issues where Russia and the European Union have common interests.
もうスペインにしました。まあ、もうこれでか。限りないのがくらいしないよ。おい、あなたやってるよ。わざとやってやろ。今。俺いじめってわかりました。でも無理や。おい、腹に消えた女の水飴。あそこちら、この辺に潜伏してるぞ、みんな。おめえ返事を言ったらさっさとせえよ、自分の。ゴミ取り紙、あっ、陰にいっぱい。まあ、あいつらがに人気アップありがとう。 俺のことよ。裁判も食らうし、パスポートは破棄されるし、無断手続きはさせられるよ。今テロ国家ってことで。国家ってもう死ぬやん。お前のせいだよ。人生めちゃくちゃやっちまって。
高いらしいな、今でも。高いらしい。
So I think that is one reason why we have the highest density of unicorns anywhere on the planet, here in Nordic countries, and of course our friends in Estonia are really in a league of their own in this. 1.3 million people, and they have 4 unicorns, Playtex, Sky, TransferWise, and our latest one being Bolt. 1.3 million people, 4 unicorns, that's more than 10% of all the unicorns in Europe actually. So the rest of Europe needs to get its act together. And then I think that if you look at this unicorn per capita, in China they have more unicorns than anywhere else, 200, but they also have more people, 1.4 billion people. So if you do the math, in China you need 7 million Chinese people to build just one unicorn company. While in Estonia they're much more efficient, only 3,100 people you need to build one unicorn. So that's actually quite exceptional. So I think that we should all be more like Estonia, and that's something that we can definitely strive to here in Europe. So let's go out there and do things, and we'll end up with lots of unicorns all over Europe.
For us in the European Roundtable, which gathers the 55 largest companies, most important companies in Europe, Europe's competitiveness is absolutely key. The world is changing. We see lesser of continued work for free trade, more protectionism growing in both East and West. And we as companies, we realize that we will not be long-term successful unless Europe is successful. And there are a few challenges that really stick out here. First, it's digitalization. The world is becoming digital through artificial intelligence. opens up for huge opportunities in every single part of society. But Europe is lagging behind here. We need to speed up there. We need to invest more, do more. Then we have the Green Deal. Europe is in the lead in this. And this is an area where we can take advantage of business opportunities, and it's important, of course, for the planet. So that's an area where we also have to come together. And then, of course, we are believers in free trade or free trade under agreed rules. And this is now a threat, and we need to stand up for it. But also, we need to be realistic and make sure that we navigate this new landscape in an effective way. For us in the European Roundtable, which gathers the 55 largest companies, most important companies in Europe, Europe's competitiveness is absolutely key. The world is changing. We see lesser of continued work for free trade, more protectionism growing in both East and West. And we as companies, we realize that we will not be long-term successful unless Europe is successful. And there are a few challenges that really stick out here. First, it's digitalization. The world is becoming digital through artificial intelligence and through the rollouts of 5G. This opens up for huge opportunities in every single part of society. But Europe is lagging behind here. We need to speed up there. We need to invest more, do more. Then we have the Green Deal. Europe is in the lead in this. And this is an area where we can take advantage of business opportunities. And it's important, of course, for the planet. So that's an area where we also have to come together. And then, of course, we are believers in free trade or free trade under agreed rules. And this is now a threat, and we need to stand up for it. But also, we need to be realistic and make sure that we navigate this new landscape in an effective way.
So I am a complete believer of public policy and the power that it can have in moving the market. I believe in strong states that can send the correct signals to markets to move in the direction we want. What states can do is actually to promote the good and tax the bad. And states are there to promote the greatest public good. I have experiences in many parts of the world where bold and clever public policy has actually helped industrial competitiveness and the growth of markets, in particular renewable energy markets. I can state the case for Latin American countries, for example, in the case of Mexico, in the past few decades, bold policy giving a clear vision as well as renewable energy targets and leaving the markets to set the crisis was and drove the lowest solar price for renewable energy in the world in 2017. You can count that example and many other examples where bold public policy has actually catalyzed an industrial revolution for the good. We are in a moment of a planetary emergency. We are both in a nature crisis as well as in a climate crisis. And if the states don't raise up their bar and put strong policies in place, it's going to be difficult that we get where we want to get. Businesses are waiting, progressive businesses are waiting, but if we don't have a common playing ground, it's going to be difficult for us to ramp up the mass of the businesses and non-state actors that are ready to act. Well, on the one hand, the European Union is very well equipped. We have been doing quite a lot of trade agreements in the world negotiations. But of course, with the changing climate, with countries not respecting WTO rules, countries going increasingly bilateral, there is a challenge there. So we are looking at how to reform our policies, of course, to be still able to do trade agreements, to strengthen the WTO and reform it with other like-minded countries, but also to protect ourselves against countries who are not playing according to the rules, and to make sure that the level playing field is respected. We have changed our trade defense mechanisms. We have implemented a coordination mechanism for investment screening, and we are looking at how to sharpen our tools. And this will be a key issue for the new commission coming in.
ヤンマーがアウトがセーレンバヨデいやこれ買収して大崎のうちへお前私やましがきうち始めた人だからねデモと反対してる
When will it all end? Brexit. I think the truthful answer is that we will know with the general election on the 12th of December the time to complete the first chapter. Either Boris Johnson will win, in which case Britain will exit the European Union on or about the end of January 2020, or alternatively, if there is a majority for the opposition parties combined, then there will be a second referendum next year. The trouble is neither of those outcomes is going to settle things definitively, because the second referendum, it might well lead to a narrow vote relating to the EU, but that would not end the division in the United Kingdom. And of course, if Mr Johnson wins his majority, then we've got to negotiate a new chip on trade, on security, on foreign policy cooperation between the United Kingdom, which will remain a big European power, major player in defence and security and economic terms. Next door to the European Union, the 27 countries are going to be my country's most important trading partner, our closest geographical democratic neighbours as far as I can possibly see. So working that through is going to take, I fear, a year more than a year, I would estimate. And I think there's a real responsibility both on UK political leaders but also on EU political leaders to get this right. European democracy is under massive strain from Russian aggression, from dramatic economic change that is adding to public mistrust in the way in which we do business. So getting the geopolitics right, having a constructive relationship between the UK and our neighbours in the EU 27 is important for the whole European democratic community.
スタイマーからね帰るした何やこれじゃ
I don't think anyone wins in trade conflicts, and even the word war is, I think, a bit overstated, because wars end up being zero-sum. One wins, one loses. And in the case of trade, it should be a win-win operation. So I think the analogy is mistaken, and by closing off your own markets, you increase costs to your own people. In the United States, about 50% of imports are for commodities or intermediate goods, so if you raise those costs, you raise costs for manufacturers and consumers in the United States, or same would be the case in Europe. And in the case of the US and China, I think that we're in a very dangerous situation. I think that there are many reasons and frustrations with China. Some of them are justifiable about forced technology transfer, intellectual property rights, reciprocity. There's also concerns about Chinese security and other policies. But I think you can find allies within China on a number of the trade issues, and you actually want to try to keep pushing both sides to a rules-based system. So I think that the path that we're on with China has led to more of confrontation. And in fact, what you're probably going to need to see is some combination of competition, cooperation, and confrontation, or at least drawing lines on some issues. So I think with a country as big as China, you need a more multifaceted policy.
俺はこう中心もうサラリーセブンほっとけここにテロリスト日本語で
gamification and game-based learning indeed is the future of lifelong learning. I believe that because as we train the new generations in the workforce, we know that we need to create materials that are a lot more engaging, that are a lot more useful, and that are going to have an impact in the way that they learn and in the way that they acquire the new skills that they need in order to remain competitive in the marketplace. What a better way to do that than through video games? As children, we learn through playing. And we believe that through gamification and through game-based learning, we can make learning fun again, not only for children, which we know is the best way to learn, but also from adults. If they play these video games, they will become more engaged, as I said earlier. They will also acquire that knowledge much more deeply, and they will be able to apply that knowledge in their daily jobs. And finally, by doing the video games through the simulators, they will be able to have experiential learning, to get the feedback on what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and learn from that.
Very clearly, I think the world is moving towards secular economy. It's a necessity. When you look at water scarcity, when you look at waste pollution, everybody is now aware of that. If we want to make a conciliation between the planet for our children and economic development, we need to move towards a secular economy, and by education, by innovation, by a different way of doing business, both for citizens and also by companies, we will make this move, which will help us collectively to have a planet great again. Thank you.
The future of entertainment in the 21st century is going to be shaped by the twin forces of globalization and digitalization, both of which are going to be terrific for consumers. Digitalization means that people will be able to consume entertainment wherever and whenever they want, and globalization means that that opportunity will be given to people around the globe. While there's some concern that large companies are going to dominate the future of the entertainment landscape, I actually have a different view, because I feel that digitalization is very empowering to creators. And when you think about a phenomenon like YouTube and user-generated consumption, these are powerful, powerful forces. Similarly, digitalization has allowed the falling of distribution barriers. So not only is production much easier, but the ability to distribute it to people is much easier. And we're really living in a golden age of entertainment with many more choices than we have. And that also means a greater democratization of ideas. And again, all of this is happening on a global scale, which is really enabled by digital technology.
I would say that the characteristics of a Nordic education system is that, first of all, they have a very inclusive system based on public funding where there should be a room for all. I think students are taught to think independently, a lot of critical thinking, and also quite a lot of creativity baked into our education. I would especially commend the Finnish system where they put their best teachers for the youngest students, and they use a lot of resources in preschool and also first to third grade to ensure that the children are best possibly equipped for future learning. And I believe that that's the best investment you can make, is to invest in the kids when they're really young, so you will lay the foundation
is actually the biggest threat from cybersecurity for Europe? Of course, we can concentrate and focus on the security side, but I would take it a bit on the other side, that if we really go to focus too much on the security side, then it really would slow down our development. I think it is the biggest threat is that we lose competitiveness. And that is for me the whole part, because if we want to be leaders in innovation, we should also know innovation, it has two aspects. First, I think you must have a great idea, but you must be the first. So that means speed. And we must make sure that I think we have an ability to be innovative and to be the first and to have speed. So for me that is the biggest threat of cybersecurity, to get it slowed down. What is actually the biggest threat from cybersecurity for Europe? Of course, we can concentrate and focus on the security side, but I will take it a bit on the other side, that if we really go to focus too much on the security side, then it really will slow down our development. I think it is the biggest threat is that we lose competitiveness. And that is for me the whole part, because if we want to be leaders in innovation, we should also know innovation, it has two aspects. First, I think you must have a great idea, but you must be the first. So that means speed. And we must make sure that I think we have an ability to be innovative and to be the first and to have speed. So for me that is the biggest threat of cybersecurity, to get it slowed down.
So are we suffering from eco-anxiety? The simple answer is yes, possibly too much. Eco-anxiety is definitely triggered by the fact that we are facing a very urgent matter with climate, but at the same time it's also because we're facing something that is very complex. It's very difficult to understand the impact of climate change, and it's very difficult to understand the solutions to reach a low-carbon economy. So in the world of investment where I am, what I see is those who are actually acting every day to invest in climate change investments and low-carbon economy investments are actually less susceptible to eco-anxiety, because they can see the result and the impact of what they do. But really what is needed to decrease this anxiety is more examples of impactful investment, change of behavior in society that would actually bring people to less anxiety.
Situation where U.S. and West European support for Ukraine was very well coordinated, and we were maintaining a consistent pressure on Russia to begin to negotiate seriously about ending its occupation of eastern Ukraine. Unfortunately, I think now the impeachment dynamics in the U.S. have really knocked U.S. policy off the table. We don't have the people, we don't have the engagement, we don't have the same focus, and as a result, I think that takes a lot of the pressure off of Russia to negotiate. I'm hopeful that as we have a Normandy format summit, possibly on December 9th, it may take a little bit longer, that can retain some of that negotiating dynamic, but I'm afraid that right now the situation is much more difficult for Ukraine than it should be.
What is the role of civil society in modern Russia? I would say it's a very important issue. Why? Because in Russia, political competition is limited. There are no real opposition parties. So the society stands up to the autocratic regime through organizing itself, through building trust through providing public goods that a corrupt and inefficient state cannot provide. And it's not just protesting corruption. It's not just about asking for democracy and rule of law. Civil society today is working on helping the poor, helping the disadvantaged, fighting domestic violence, promoting gender equality, defending minorities. So this is actually where the European future for Russia is. And luckily, with the new communication technology, with internet, it's easier to organize itself, it's easier to inform itself, and it's easier to promote change, creating new Russia that eventually will become part of greater Europe.
At a time when 1,000 NATO troops are stationed at the border between Estonia and Russia to deter possible Russian aggression, when President Macron is speaking about what he calls cercle concentrique, when citizens in Moldova and Georgia are questioning whether Europe and the US will come to rescue if there is a security guarantee, and when sanctions against Russia and counter embargoes have become kind of the very essence of the idea of a European security policy, well, what can we expect from Russia? We know that Putin is actually more popular than most of his competitors. But will Medvedev be a different leader than Putin? In short, can we expect a different kind of trajectory from Russia in the coming years when the bureaucratic elite inside Russia is focusing more on digitalization than what some might call modernization? As always, the views on Russia are diverging.
The school of the future for the adult workforce will essentially not be a school. Many people will have to continue to learn, continue to reskill, continue to upskill, but they'll do that inside their workplace. We will need to ensure that at least 2 to 3 months of learning are integrated into every single year that somebody is at work. The second thing that we know is that the Fourth Industrial Revolution is changing workplaces and the needs of the labor force so quickly that we're also going to need to quite fundamentally reform education systems. And that applies to the delivery and it also applies to the content. One, we need much more technology integrated into schools. And second, we need to ensure that young children are understanding how to apply these technologies in the future, understanding how to collaborate with each other, and understand how to apply critical thinking so that they're able to continue to learn throughout their life course.
So basically, when you look at the state of innovation in Europe, I think there are 3 fundamental trends that you need to be aware of, or these are sort of 3 fundamental facts of how innovation has been evolving over the last few years. And I would say that those 3 are: the first is that talent is being concentrated in very tight and small clusters, and this is very atypical and unexpected. We thought the digital economy would distribute talent geographically and people would simply connect processes of different types. But the truth of the matter is that actually there's something about knowledge, particularly this form tacit knowledge, that doesn't travel very well. So we're seeing these very tight clusters emerge in places like Boston or Silicon Valley or Hong Kong or Singapore or others around particular areas of knowledge. The second development that I think is significant is that we're also seeing a concentration of productivity growth in very particular companies, what the OECD calls frontier firms. Productivity over the last 10 years has really skyrocketed in those firms, but has stalled in every other firm within the market. So a few firms have become highly competitive and more so over time, and others are simply falling behind in terms of growth. The third fact that I think is significant is the geographic distribution of those companies and of innovation. So we can see that China and the US concentrate almost all of the startups that we can term unicorns that have a value of more than $1 billion today, mostly again in China and the US. So there are big gaps around the world, there are a few in Europe. So what this depicts is a world of concentrated talent, concentrated productivity growth, and an empty hinterland with these very particular clusters of startups and innovators. And this poses, I think, major challenges to Europe. Fundamentally, I would say two. One is we need to attract these firms who want to have high quality and numerous jobs in the future, and we need to attract these companies if we want to have fiscal traction and be able to fund public services moving forward and sustain our social contract. So if I was a policymaker, and this is my final message, and it has been in the session today, it would be we need to focus our economic policy on developing these frontier firms, providing them with the talent, providing them with the frameworks and the capacity to grow and do well and innovate and bring wealth, jobs, and tax revenue to Europe. And if we don't do this, I think we're going to face a major challenge of employment and public service funding. Thank you.
So it's great to be here at the Twilight Tour Commission. Great event. I think what we talked about this morning was Europe adapt and how should it adapt to huge technological revolution that's happening around the world. I talked about it from an Uber perspective. At Uber we have a vibrant business in Europe, and we've adjusted to Europe in many ways. We've launched partner protection to help have our partners that use our platform, drivers, couriers, restaurants, have additional social protection. We've also adjusted to how cities want to design transportation for the future. Now, as companies adapt, what can governments and cities do to welcome innovation and technology, make it possible for users, customers, to use those technology breakthroughs in their cities, in their countries, on self-driving, for example, on health systems that help detect cancers earlier on education for people in remote areas. So we talked about a few ideas and solutions to help this happen. And so specifically on my end, I talked about education, which is going to be a big challenge, but also a big opportunity for Europe, how we transform the skills, and adapt the skills of our people in Europe to a world with more technology. We talked about funding. What can governments do to channel funding, to invest in technology that is born in Europe and leads from Europe? And we also talked about regulation. How can government accept and welcome innovation, disruptive innovation sometimes, and design rules that make it possible while also preserving the social contract and any incumbents whose jobs may be needing to change due to technology. So these are some of the solutions we talked about, and overall there was a great consensus in the room that Europe has got fantastic opportunity, massive opportunity, and that both global companies and European companies can help with that.
So the digital transformation is very important for businesses as well as for the society as such. From my perspective, it includes a number of technologies which are, on the one hand, artificial intelligence and pattern recognition, secure cloud, and also ubiquitous connectivity and the Internet of Things. I do see a great potential. For example, pattern recognition will help us to detect cancer better, will help us to deal with traffic management, will actually help us to get a better consumer experience around voicified services. So what do I recommend to businesses, and what are we doing as a business Deutsche Telekom? So number one, I would advise anyone for your own business to figure out how you can leverage pattern recognition to improve customer experience and automation. To make it practical, at Deutsche Telekom we use it for for predictive maintenance, for automation, for our voicification. But more important than technology is actually for all of us the necessary cultural change. In the past, many big corporates were organized in a very hierarchical and tayloristic, top-down, command and control manner. And we all need to unlearn that a little bit and introduce new, more agile ways, allowing disruptors to actually make their points, creating flatter hierarchies, work across the board, and find a great combination of experienced people and new people, younger people, sometimes also older people who truly understand things like data engineering or architecture. So I guess for a business leader of large enterprises, the art is to find the right balance between what you want to disrupt and what you want to continue to lead in the traditional way. I call that ambidextrous leadership. Yeah? Some things you want to run in a structured way still, while others you want more disruption and innovation to truly succeed.
Welcome to Illuminati Silver Today is Saturday the 26th of February 2022. We're publishing our Gold and Silver Weekly Update for the week ending the 25th. And what a turbulent week it has been. Certainly one to test traders' nerves, that's for sure. So let's take a look. Well, looking at gold and silver, we can see that gold fell $8 last week, falling from 1897 to 1889, having hit a high of 1974, the highest in 8 years, and a low of 1881, a fall of 0.4%. In sterling terms, gold finished the week at £14.09, that's up 13. And in euros, it closed at 1,676 euros. That's unchanged. Silver did better proportionally. It rose 30 cents, rising from $23.97 to $24.20, having hit a high of $25.64 and a low of $23.71, a rise of 1.25%. In sterling terms, silver closed at £18.10. That's up 47 pence. And in euros, it closed at 21.53 euros. That's up 0.36 euros. Gold to silver ratio fell from 79.1 to 1 to 77. Like equities, cryptocurrencies were extremely volatile, and Bitcoin ended up down $717. And currently stands at $39,257. It was down over $5,000 at one stage on Wednesday. Dow Jones closed on Friday at 34,058. That's up 834 points on the day and down 21. The S&P 500 closed at 4,385, up 95 on the day and up 37 on the week. And the Nasdaq Composite closed at 13,694, up 221 points on the day, and up 146 points. Oils were also quite turbulent. Brent crude closed at $97.93. That's up a whopping $4.39 on the week, though it did touch $104, and it stayed there. Obviously, it would have been up around $10. WTI crude closed at 91.59. That's just a rise of 52 cents. So WTI peak prices, whilst they also rose quite recently, underperformed. Brent crude, the dollar index stands at 96.61, and that's up 0.57 on the week, gains well over 97. During the course of Thursday. Now, we concluded last week's video with the following figures. We see gold trading between 1850 and 1950 and 1825 to 1975 as up. see silver trading between 23.25 and 24.75 and 22.75 to 25.50. Well, we're pleased we extended the gold outlier range to 1975 based on a possible invasion of the Ukraine, and to see gold peak at 1974, $1 less, was indeed gratifying, as was the fallback to our normal trading range by the end of the year. The difference between its high and low for gold was $93, which was the largest for some considerable time. Silver closed well within our normal trading range and operated within it for much of the week. The invasion of Ukraine did, however, push it to 14 cents higher than our outlier range. If only we'd said $25.75 instead of $25.50. The difference between its high and low for the week was $1.93. Again, like gold, one of its largest moves for some considerable time. Obviously, price movements were dictated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which caused gold and silver prices to skyrocket and equities and cryptos to plummet, only to recover again later that day, which was an impressive turnaround. So much so that yesterday we published a video entitled, "What Will It Take for Gold to Hit $2,000?" And we've placed a link to that below. Please do listen to that. It covers some interesting aspects that tie in also with our gold price forecast that we published earlier. Now, whilst all eyes were on Russia last week, some interesting economic data was announced by the United States. Market manufacturing and services flash PMIs were higher than expected, as was the consumer confidence index. Initial jobless claims were down, as was continuing jobless claims. Negative side though, PCE inflation, both monthly and year-on-year, were higher, as was though real consumer spending for January. Both actions must now suggest a regular short. Now, before we take a more in-depth look at gold and silver, it's worth looking at what data is coming out this week. Monday, we have the Chicago PMI for February. Tuesday, the market manufacturing final PMI and the ISM manufacturing index for February and construction spending in January. Wednesday, we have the ADP employment report for February, which may suggest what's going to happen on Friday, and on Thursday, of course, the regular jobless claims and the market services final PMI and the ISM services index, both for February. And we have factory orders for January. Then on Friday, the all-important non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate, and average hourly earnings for February. So an important week, and in our view, the final determinant week, as far as data is concerned, to enable the FOMC to finally make up its mind about interest rates when it meets on the 15th and 16th of March. Geopolitically, we still have Russia and the Ukraine issue, which will no doubt continue this year. And this will capture most of the headlines about the election next week, I suspect. So what is gold looking like today? Well, it's resting at a major support level of 1888, which is where the 10-day moving average rests. And it has obviously psychologically strong support at 1850, and then extremely strong support at the 50-year at $18. Resistance is seen in June's highs of 1,160. The MACD histogram is suggesting consolidation. We should not ignore the fact that gold still fell, even as the dollar value also fell on Friday. Like gold, silver prices also fell after their post Thursday morning. Support is seen on the 10-day moving average of 23.93 and resistance to of $24.21. Like gold, the MACD is suggesting consolidation. Russia has said that it will consider talks if the Ukraine lays down its arms, while the Ukrainian president stated last night that they will continue to fight. So once again, a prediction for gold and silver this coming week is going to be extremely difficult and almost again entirely dependent on Russia and Ukraine. That said, there is important economic data
this in mind, we see gold really trading between 1840 and 1940 and 1810 to 1960 as outliers. Now we will be surprised if it gets that high. We see silver trading between 2350 and 25 and 2275 to 2540 as outliers. What do you think? Please do share your thoughts. Meanwhile, thank you for listening. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. Not forgetting to press the bell sign so you're notified of our videos published. And as always, we wish you a safe, enjoyable weekend and prosperous week ahead.
Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.
የሶስተኛ ዲግሪ ፒኤችዲ በመያዝ በተመረቀበት ዩኒቨርሲቲና ከአውሮፓ ክብረ ወሰኑ እስከ ዛሬ እሱ ነው። 58 ዓመቱን በጠላት በተያዘ ግዛት በጦርነት መሃል አየር ጃንጥላ ፓራሹት በመውረድም እስካሁን የደረሰበት ነበር። ለ30 ዓመታት ያህል የተወለደባትን ምድር ነፃ ሀገር ትሆን ዘንድ ቢጥርም ከነፃነት በኋላ አይኖርም። ወይም የአውሮፓ ሀገሮች ሁሉንም ማለት ይቻላል ላቲን አሜሪካ፣ ሜክሲኮ የሀገሩ ያህል ኖሮባቸዋል። የሚገርመው የኖሩባቸው ሀገሮች መሪዎችን በሙሉ ማለት ይቻላል ወዳጅ ያደረጉ ነው። ከጀርባ በዘመኑ አሉ የተባሉ ሊቃና መልክ የተጠራ ሰዎች የልቦናቸውን አድርጓል። የፈለገውን ሀገር መሪ ከአውሮፓ እስከ አሜሪካ በአንድ የስልክ ጥሪ ማግኘት የሚችልም ይባልበታል። በዚህም የተነሳ ዛሬ የአውሮፓ ህብረት የሚባለውን መሰረት ለመጣል የበቃ እዚህና ለሌሎቹ ሰዎችና ነገስታትና የሀገር መሪዎች ታላቅ የሜዳሊያ ሽልማት ሊሰጡ ቢፈቅዱም እሱ ግን ይጠይቀዋል። በዛ ህይወቱን በችግር ድሃ ሆኖ ቢኖርም ዓለምን የለወጡ ታላላቅ ድርጅቶችን የመሰረተ ይመለከታል። እነዚህም አንዱና ስሙን በክፉ የሚያስነሳው ደግሞ ቢልደርበርግ የሚባለው የሚስጥር ስና በልጅነቱ የተጠራ በስተርጅና ወደ ሰይጣን የሚሰራ ድርጅት መስርቷል ያስባለው ሁኔታ በዘመኑ ሀብት ሳይኖረው ግን በጉዞ ላይ ነበረና ማንም የት እንዳለ እንኳን አያውቅም ነበር። ለማን እንደሚሰራም ግን ያውቃል። የሚያከብሩት በመስሪያዎችን ተሰማርተው የሚሰራቸው ሰዎች ይሰራሉ Thank you. በብዛት የተሰየሙ ታላቁ የክራካው ዩኒቨርሲቲ ፕሮፌሰርና ዲን ለሚደጉ ቤት ናቸው። አቡትና አስተማሪ የበቁ የዩኒቨርሲቲ ምሁራን ናቸው። ይህ የፖላንድ ብሔርተኝነት እንደሚያቀነቅን የተማረና ለመንበር የተጠጋበት ስር የተወለደውን ጆሴፍ ሬትሊንገር ሕይወቱ ገና የስተኛ ዓመት ያለ የሚለውጥ እውነት ተከሰተ ያሉ የታሪክ መጽሐፍ ነው። በአውስትሮ-ሃንጋሪ ሶል መንግስት ሉዓላዊነቷ የጠፋባት የፖሊስ ምድር ደግሞ ሩዛኖስኪ የሕግ የግል አማካሪ የነበሩት አባት ጆሴፍ ስታንስላው ሬትሊንገር መሞታቸው ነው የሕፃኑን የሕይወት መንገድ የቀየረ ምክንያት የሚባለው። በፖላንድ ብሔርተኞችና በመሪዎችም ዘንድ የግዛቲቱን ምድር በንጉሥ ችሎት ያስመለሱ የክብር ሞገስ ያገኙ ናቸውና በረከቱ ለልጃቸው ማስረዳት ቀረም። በ9 ዓመት አባቱን ያጣው ሕፃን የማሳደጉን ኃላፊነት የወሰዱት ሩዛኖስኪ ናቸውና እናም ወጪውን በሙሉ ችለው ወደ ሮም ላኩት ክህነትን በካቶሊክ ገዳማት ይማርና ይከበር ዘንድ። እንዲያውም ጆሴፍ ሬትሊንገር የተቀላቀለው በካቶሊክነት አክራሪ አስተምህሮ ይከተላል የሚባለውን የጀስዊት ቀሳውስት ገዳም ነበረም። ይሁንና ከ3 ወራት በላይ በገዳሙ መቆየት አልፈቀደም። ለዚህ ምክንያቱ ደግሞ በቅስናው ለመቀጠል እስከ ዕድሜ ልኩ ግዴታ ባለመቀበሉ። እናም ፈቃዱን ያልተጋፉት ሩዛኖስኪ አሁንም ወጪውን ከፍለው ወደ ፍራንክፈርት አስመጡ። በግዛቲቱ በሚገኝበት በትምህርት ቤትም እውቀት ይቀስም ዘንድ ተደረገ። ለከፍተኛ ትምህርቱም እንደ ልዑላዊ ቤተሰቡ ሁሉን አሟልተው ወደ ፈረንሳይ ፓሪስ ላኩት። የፈረንሳይ ፓሪስ ከተማም በጆሴፍ ሬትሊንገር የእውቀትም የትውውቅም መዲና በመሆን የበዛ ስፍራ ያላት ናት። ሩዛኖስኪ ልክ እንደ ልጃቸው የተገባውን አሟልተው ነበርና ወደ ፓሪስ የላኩት የተቀላቀለውም የመሳፍንት ልጆች የሚበዙበትን ስብስብ ሆነ። በእውቁና የአውሮፓ ባለጠጋ ልጆች ይማሩበት በሚመረጠው የሶርቦን ዩኒቨርሲቲ ያጠና ዘንድም የመረጠው ደግሞ ስነ ጽሑፍ ሆነ። እንደ ሌሎች የባለጠጋ ልጆች መከማተል የሚያበዛ ለትምህርቱ ትኩረት የማይሰጥ ነበረም። ከዘመን ጀምሮም እስከደረሰበት የ20ኛው መቶ ክፍለ ዘመን ድረስ ትግረግ የሚባሉትን የስነ ጽሑፍ መጽሐፍ ድም ሳያስቀር ከዳር እስከ ዳር ተወጥቷቸዋል ይላሉ የታሪክ ጸሐፊዎች።